Today at Liberty Point, we're going to be moving a cabin, or a so-called cabin. It's a good story behind that. Once we get into some of the slower and actually moving the cabin, we'll start talking about the story behind it, and how this sort of cabin became a cabin instead of a shed and whatnot. But as far as what we're doing here, like I said, it's just my wife and I. For all the followers out there, you guys understand the channel a little bit. For all the new subscribers and new viewers, we do everything ourselves. And I've never driven an excavator. I think once in my life, when I was younger, a friend had one. I jumped in it, messed with it for a minute. But learning the excavators, the small one, the big one, has all been accomplished in the last year since I moved down here. And my wife and I started this project. So we actually built it next to our campsite / tent, which is not our home site. We're going to build it as a shed. And then we decided to move it, try to get ourselves out of this tent. So we figured we'd just throw some logs under there and drag it. We actually built it very well. It has 2x6 exterior walls. We glued it, screwed it, and it's built pretty tough. It's got 2x10s as the floor joist and whatnot. So my mom actually thought the windows might possibly crack lifting them up. I pretty much knew this thing was built very good, and I didn't really think there was any issues with moving it or lifting it or anything like that. And it's funny, at the end of the video, as you see when we put it back down on the blocks, it was actually supported only by 3 corners, and the other one wouldn't even come down and sit on the block, and it was pretty sturdy. It wasn't even sagging at all. So at this point, we pushed 2 logs up. I think one was a hickory. Actually, my wife has an app on her phone. We're trying to learn the different types of trees and foliage around here, learning how to homestead and live off the land. So I think there's a hickory under there, and then another one was an oak that came down almost a year ago when we was clearing off the site. And we slid them up and under there. I took 2x6 on the front, 2x6 on the back, but just tons of screws to make it so the log sort of kept the proper distance while we were dragging it. They actually held up very well. I think 8 screws in each log. 2.5-inch deck screws, I believe we used. And at this point, we've lifted it up. We're removing all of the logs. Actually, I think that already happened as I'm talking here. We lifted it up. My wife moved all the supports that we had. We ended up having 6 good-sized rocks in the ground, and built it. We built a pretty good base, thinking it would be like a shed over here, but it ended up changing. So at this point, I think I didn't feel confident with the arm, how close it was to the shed. What's called a cabin, a small cabin. And so Leslie, she's over there working hard like she always does, putting on another chain, hooking it up so I can keep the excavator further away. When it comes to this big excavator, it's a big machine. And like I said, I'm no excavator driver or anything, just learned since we've got it down here. And I was just a little concerned keeping it that close. It could rip right through that thing with ease. So at the beginning of the video here, you can see it takes a little bit of time because we had to pull it. The ground wasn't very flat at all. You can see the different size supports that was up and under originally. The right side, was up 2.5 feet off the ground. The left corner is actually sitting on the rock on the ground. And once we sort of got it moving, as you'll see in the next minute or two, it ended up starting to be a little bit easier. So now that it's dragging and moving, let's go ahead and talk about this. It's a long story. Now we have a gentleman that has been coming back here, and he's almost 80. I believe he's 78, could be 80. His name is Freeman, and he's been coming back to this land his whole life, and comes back here with his dog. Excellent individual. I think it was a sheriff and retired from there, and just overall great man. And he was talking. You could tell. I think he could have used the money, and he said, "Hey, I got some used roof trusses in my front yard. They've been sitting here on a project, and we just decided not to do it." And so I went ahead and offered to buy them from him. So one of them was actually pretty bad. We didn't end up using it, but for the rest of them, we're like, hey, let's just go ahead and build a shed. We can get some of the tools and a lot of the stuff out of our tent that really doesn't need to be in here. It's one of the hardest parts about doing this project. We're trying to build the home site at a different location than we originally set up our tent. So we got to get in the shipping container to get tools. Some of the tools are in the shipping container. Some of the tools are in here. Some of the tools are in the back of the Expedition. Some of them are in the Humvee. You know, coming from an individual that had a garage and had his tools nice and organized, it has been a disaster, to say the least. For any men out there that, I guess, and ladies, that are tool-type people, you understand they need to be organized. If you can't find your tool when you need it, you might as well not have it. So we ended up thinking we'll just make a shed out of the rafters. And then as we started building it, I don't ever do anything half-hearted, for lack of cussing on YouTube. I don't know. Can you curse on here? Half-ass. And so I ended up building the floor very good, building the walls. And as we got as we started getting it completed, we said, well, why don't we just get out of the tent and get like a nice solid floor? I mean, I don't know if some of the viewers maybe that enjoy the channel and look back, we actually have videos where I'm pushing on the tent floor in front of the refrigerator, and it's like a pond. It's squishy like a waterbed, So, there's some pros and cons of living in this tent. And one of the cons is when it rains really bad, water gets in here. So we were looking forward to moving out and getting into a solid structure. Plus, summer is coming, and the AC and everything, or the solar panels and the solar setup work great for all the electronics that we need in here: hot water heater, fridge, microwave, coffee maker. But when it comes to running the AC unit, it did run the 3-phase military unit, but it struggles. We've added an extra inverter, so we're building up a system where we'll be able to do that. But it's really the tent. I ended up getting a screen on top of the tent and ended up the solar shade for the tent. It helped a lot. It actually dropped the temperature in here quite a bit. But we don't want to go through another summer with the banking temperature. So we decided to cut some windows, cut some holes and put some windows and a door in this. And then once we decided, hey, let's go ahead and move into that, it'll get us out of this. We designed the kitchen, where the bed's going to be, did the whole house plans, and said, I think we can fit it in this. And by the way, it's a 16 by 24. And so then we decided, well, how do we get it to the home site? We have family members that are helping us quite a bit on our journey here, and we went back and forth. And God bless everybody that helps us. I changed my mind. I'm like, well, this works. But then I start thinking of other things later and say, wow, that don't work. And end up changing the plans that we made. But all of us decided that it would probably be best just to go ahead and move this up to the home site. Live in it up there while we work on the bigger home. Our forever home, as Leslie and I like to call it. So that's what you guys have been watching as I've been talking. There's not a lot to talk about as it comes to moving it. As far as, there was a few difficult spots, especially coming downhill when it started sliding a little bit more than I liked it to, moving downhill. So I don't really try to hide any bad things that happen and just go ahead and lay it out there, especially for anybody else. One time moving it down the hill, it did slide, barely slid into the chain. I was lifting it up high to keep it level. And as it was starting to, you got to put enough pressure on the chain to actually get it to start moving. And then once it starts moving, sliding, coming down the hill a little bit, sometimes, one time it moved too far and the chain touched the top, which ended up I'm trying to, it's not my job. I'm trying to remember the name, the drip guard when I was learning how to do roofing for this. So the drip guard on like about a 1-inch section just barely bent up a little bit. Other than that, the move went fairly well. I can't really say I wasn't really stressed a little bit. I was always worried that it's going to catch on something or drag on something, hit some trees. I thought we had enough space, and we did. But even on the back right side of this, if I had it to do over again, I definitely would have slid the bigger end of the tree on the one of the logs. As if you're looking at the video right now, it's the far right one. It's the thinner side, and that put that in closer to the ground. And we don't really know where. We've went back and looked at the ground and identified it. We don't know if it was originally pulling it off the corner rock that it was sitting on, but that back right corner at the lower end of it, separated 1/8 of an inch maybe, which is nothing. I mean, get it. I haven't really hammered it back on there, but as soon as I get it, placed where I want it permanently, I'll just hammer it back, hit the corner with a sledge. It should be good to go. But other than that, we got the one little inch of bending on the rain thing. I think that'll be a really quick fix with some pliers. Just squeeze it. And other than that, I think it went pretty well. We were... sometimes my buddy, I have a friend, Chad, he lives down here, and he said, they make these little dollies where they sort of use big beams like I use, and they got little wheel dollies. But, in a lot of the comments, a lot of people have a lot of good suggestions, but a lot of those good suggestions comes with a lot of money. And, a lot of people might watch these videos and say, well, clearly you got a lot of money. Well, no, most of my money has been spent over the years prepping for this. So like the big excavator was bought at an auction. I ended up winning the little excavator. It had an engine burn fire, and it was at an insurance auto auction, and I got it for really cheap and spent weeks and weeks and weeks of doing research and downloading parts manuals and rebuilding a little section of the engine fire. So, it may look like we have a lot of money to throw at this project, but we don't. So the shed, as right there, when you look at like Lowe's or Home Depot's, what they'll give you for $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, we might have $3,500 wrapped up in that right there. And that's the benefit of doing everything yourself versus buying. It's 2x6 walls, 3/4 inch plywood on the sides. So it's built solid and good, and it's 18-inch or 16-inch on center studs going around it. We don't do look at the stuff at Home Depot and Lowe's. It's like 24 inches studs, and they're 2x4s. So, like I said, would it have been good to get the dolly wheels? Yes. We wouldn't have to worry about the building sliding into the arm. I tried just to keep the machine moving and let it, but it didn't. The slightest little bit of turn on the excavator is a big difference out there on the arm. So I felt better. It was safer just to go ahead and drag it out and back it up, as you can see in a lot of the videos from there. I'm actually backing up with it. There I'm pulling it. But most of the movement was backing the excavator up and extending the arm out at the same time, getting the excavator in place, and then pulling the barn forward. And doing that a lot. Some of the places where the trail was really straight and really smooth, I would just leave the arm in place and back the whole machine up, and do it that way. But here we are. We got it in place. Where the excavator is sitting now was roughly where the cabin is going to be. The lake's right behind it, and so we're leaving place to pour a footer, and we're lifting it up, getting blocks put in place. I think that's what we're doing now. Yeah, so we're lifting. It's lifted up off the logs. We're putting blocks in place. We're going to lower this side down onto the blocks. I believe we drive it around and do the other side, and that was the move. Getting it up here, you can see in the background we did get gravel for the main house, house up there, and we're slowly progressing. But it's just my wife and I. We're doing our best. Hey, we're learning the video editing software, and we're newbies at all this. So we want to thank you for watching the video. Thank you for spending time with us, and we greatly appreciate your comments and feedback. And any videos you want to hear in the future, go ahead and tell us in the comments. Thank you guys very much.